PA, man. We got an amazing brother today, man, coming on the show. We had this brother, man, I don't know what to say, man. This brother was born in Detroit, Michigan. He's an American author and a minister in the Nation of Islam. He received a Bachelor's of Arts in Religious Studies from Morehouse College in Atlanta, graduating with honors in 1994. In 2003, he received a master's degree in Islamic Studies from the University of Michigan, whence he also received a PhD in Islamic Studies, with a focus on early theological development in Islam. We have no other than student minister, Dr. Wesley Muhammad.
Beautiful people, beautiful people, beautiful people. PA here, Afternoon Jams, Big Rob, special edition of the show. We're stopping the music. We want to say hello to our friends in Shreveport, Louisiana, where my good friend Johnny Antoine has tapped in to run this interview on 97.7 The Heat WKSH. Also, hello to my friends in 103.7 The Beat, Muskegon, Michigan, Power 105.3 Ben Harbor, Michigan. And I'm down here where there's the hurricane watch going on in Orlando, Florida at 98.5 The Wire in Orlando. Big Rob, we are honored to have this very distinctive guest today, the one and only Dr. Wesley Muhammad. How you doing today, Doctor?
You got wait, PA, you said it wrong. You said it wrong, PA.
Go ahead, Big Rob. We did your intro. Go ahead, brother.
Student minister, Dr. Wesley Muhammad.
Student minister, Dr. Wesley Muhammad.
You got to put some emphasis on that, brother.
Okay, bro.
You know who you talking to? He's from Detroit, man.
Put some more testosterone in there. Yeah.
Brother Paul, Brother Big Rob, I am doing excellent. I'm so honored to be on your powerful platform.
Yes, sir. It is an honor to have you here. You haven't changed, man, because last time we had you on, you know, you have blown up since that time. You've been on Breakfast Club. You've been on all these major shows. But when I text you, you respond back, man. I feel honored.
No, I'm honored to have received the outreach from you, Brother Paul. You reminded me of the time I was last on your show when we discussed the Bible. And that conversation with you was tremendous. I'm so honored to have had the opportunity to discuss that subject with you. And in fact, I believe that was the first viral piece that I've ever had, was that conversation with you several years ago on Who Wrote the Bible. So I'm so honored to be invited back on your mighty platform.
Well, we're honored to have you back. This is on YouTube. We on radio. We on Facebook. We're going to hit them up again. You have been in the trenches trying to bring to the forefront the conversation about hip hop and marijuana. You've been on the forefront of a lot of different things. So I don't even know where to start. But I guess let's talk about hip hop. We just had the BET Awards that took place. What are your thoughts when you think about hip hop and where is that now in comparison to where it was, 20, 25, 30 years ago?
Well, I think this year's BET Awards vindicated the claim of the Los Angeles Times 2 years ago, in 2018, 3 years ago. The Los Angeles Times declared, quote, hip hop is right now at its queerest.
Wow.
Queerest. And that is correct. Lil Nas X's performance at the end, none of us, even I was sitting, Brother Paul and Brother Big Rob, with my wife, we were watching it. We know we have come to expect not really allow the children to sit in front of the TV because we don't know what will pop off. We just can't anticipate that particular performance from Lil Nas X. The fact that was not just permitted, but scripted. They rehearsed that on the fact that it was scripted into the BET Awards. Lets you know where hip hop is today. The agenda in hip hop has been and is successful. That's what I got from this year's BET Award.
Wow. So this was planned. That the kiss at the end, and I didn't watch the award show at all. But the kiss at the end, that whole thing, whatever they did, that was all planned then.
Well, all of the down to the so-called or ostensible ad-lib conversation between awards, all of that is scripted. All of that is rehearsed. So yes, Lil Nas X's performance, they had to rehearse that. And I am very doubtful that he sprung, because that kiss, that menage a trois kiss, if you will, that didn't just happen any more than his giving Satan a lap dance the last go round. This happened to fall out of the ceiling of that building. No, all of that was scripted. All of that was green lighted. And I imagine that those who green lighted that performance were so anxious for it to go down, because they knew the impact it would have on the psychology of the mainly Black people that were watching.
Wow. Some people, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, some people would say there were women shaking their butts and all that. Is that just as bad as Lil Nas X we did at the end?
So what we have documented in our book, detailing the scientific assault and the weaponization of not just marijuana, but also hip hop, we've documented that the origin of porn rap and the origin of the gay agenda in hip hop converges at the same point. Porn rap is as damaging to the culture as is the gay agenda in hip hop. But it's very important. We did a piece on WAP, Meg Thee Stallion and Cardi B's song. We, in our critique of WAP and porn rap that represents, our assault isn't against our sister Meg Thee Stallion or our sister Cardi B. Our assault is against Craig Cowman and Leo Cohen, the Jews who are the authors of porn rap. And the same Jews that are the authors of porn rap are the authors of queer rap. So yes, seeing our sisters hypersexualize themselves on that stage was as disappointing to me as seeing our brother Lil Nas X homosexualize himself on that stage.
Can people like Lil Nas X be helped? Can he change? Can he evolve? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. There is, as a student of the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan, I know and understand that there is no Black person that is beyond redemption. All Black people in America have been born in the sin and shaped in the iniquity of American white supremacy. So while my sin, the effects of my birth in this country may be different and differently displayed than that of Lil Nas X or that of Megan Thee Stallion, but all of us are shaped by American white supremacy, and God came to redeem all of us. So there is no Black person that starts off outside the power of God's redemption. That includes Little Nas X. So we believe our brother can be saved. And I got to be honest, I do not believe that his homosexuality is genuine.
You believe it's all Hollywood?
I do. I believe it started that way. Little Nas X said, and we quote him in our book, he said, before he blew up, he was broke, poor, sleeping on his sister's couch, and then he was gay. And then he blew up. And remember, he came out at the very end of Pride Month. And after he came out, that was when Little Nas X's career skyrocketed. So I absolutely believe, and even when you can tell, I couldn't, but my wife, women are more keen to those things. He doesn't even sell it well. He doesn't. So now this is my personal opinion. I do not believe that his homosexuality was authentic. I believe he was made an offer that he couldn't refuse, and he didn't refuse it, and he has blown up as a consequence, but it's a hard sell. He's not selling it well.
Dr. Wesley Muhammad on the conversation today. Do you believe that some people are born gay?
I do. I believe that scientifically, the enemy of God has since 1985, 86, mastered the science of intervening in God's affairs in the womb of women, able to manipulate gender in the womb. I do not believe that God makes people gay. We have documented that there are multiple ways in which gender inversion can be induced in the womb. And so when you have, for example, transgendered persons who believe adamantly that they are a man trapped in a woman's body or a woman trapped in a man's body. Some of them are tormented by that conflict such that they would rather end their own life than suffer that conflict. I believe that a good portion of those are genuine. And we know the science of how that is done. We know how scientifically the neurology of a XY fetus supposed to be born as a male child. And an XX fetus is supposed to be born as a female child, but they've had the science since the 1980s of how to feminize the neurology and the physiology of an XY fetus, such that that XY fetus will come out physically having a reproductive system that looks like a female's. It's not a genuine vagina, but a pseudo vagina. Or an XX fetus can be born with an enlarged clitoris looking like a proto-penis. And more than that, scientists can choose with regard to a XY fetus. Scientists can choose to either feminize the neurology or leave the neurology masculine and feminize the physiology, because these two masculinization processes occur separately in the womb. That is to say, masculinity is both physiology, right? Come out with male genitals, but it's also neurology. Now, it takes two separate bursts of testosterone, one that masculinizes the physiology, and then the other that masculinizes the neurology. Scientists knows how to hone in and interfere with both or one or the other. And if they choose to interfere with the testosterone burst that is supposed to masculinize the neurology, what you have is an XY fetus coming out of the womb looking like a male, having the physiology of a male, but having the neurology of a female. And this is how such persons who believe they are a female trapped in a male body can be scientifically produced in the womb.
Wow. Is this done through what? Through food? Through some kind of chemicals? If you don't mind, just share, how did this happen? Because somebody has
to, ways. Now, of course, it started in the laboratory. We documented, the grandfather, who we identify as the grandfather of the testosterone conspiracy and the estrogen assault. Eugen Steinig, a German scientist who was the first to discover how to manipulate gender chemically. His science has grown such that a whole myriad of chemicals are able to cause this, what they call endocrine disruption or gender bending in the womb. And this myriad of chemicals is made, we are exposed to them through our food. For example, BPA, phthalates. These are just two of the gender bending chemicals that Black people are exposed to at higher rates than white people, exposed through our food, through our water. Our water is estrogenized. But also our so-called recreational drugs. In particular, of course, this 800-page book focuses on marijuana, weaponized marijuana, loud, the synthetic THC that is made available to the public. Because there is now, of course, THC is that chemical in marijuana that drives us to get it so that we can get high. It's the psychoactive chemical within marijuana. But none of the dispensary marijuana or marijuana products, cannabis products, has natural God-made THC in it. All of it has synthetic government-issued THC, and this synthetic THC is one of the chemicals that can do exactly what I just described in terms of cutting off the testosterone burst in the womb of a woman that's supposed to masculinize that XY fetus. This synthetic THC is one of those chemicals that can cause gender inversion in the womb.
How popular is this synthetic marijuana, or THC?
Well, it's as popular as legal and illegal marijuana is. And that's very popular because you're not getting natural THC in any of these products. The government regulates all cannabis and cannabinoid products. And the government is very clear that the THC that's provided to all of the dispensaries, so all of the shops, is a derivative of what's called Adams 9-carbon compound, the first synthetic THC molecule that was created by Roger Adams, funded by the US military. This marijuana that is loud, was started out as a military weapon, taking natural cannabis and increasing its potency, making it loud. Roger Adams was the first with military funding, was the first to produce the loud molecule. And then the U.S. Army Chemical Corps just increasingly elevated the potency, the loudness of this cannabis product. And this is the origin of our loud, which is very distinct from cannabis. Cannabis is God-made. Loud is government-made.
Whoa. Live with Dr. Wesley Muhammad. Your comments online. We on Facebook. We on YouTube. We want to shout out Sweetport, Louisiana, Orlando, Florida, Muskegon, Michigan, and Ben Harbor, Michigan. Also, a huge shout out to the mayor of Ben Harbor, who I believe is the first Muslim Nation of Islam mayor in the country, Mayor Marcus Muhammad, for being a big
brother Minister Mayor.
Yeah,
and a minister. For
yeah. Right. Big Rob, go ahead. You got a question? Because I got a bunch of them for Dr. Wesley.
Oh no, you keep on going. I every time I'm in this brother's presence, I'm shutting up because he got too much knowledge. I can't even keep up with him.
So the scientific assault on Black America, and you just mentioned some of it. Are there other things that we need to be aware of that we need to be aware of today that could change the way we look at things?
Yes, we have to be real clear. While there is much focus on the weaponization of marijuana and its contribution to this scientific assault, the leading vector of these dangerous chemicals, the leading vector or avenue for the scientific assault isn't the blunt we smoke, it's the food that we eat. The leading vector of the chemical assault against Black America is the food made available and accessible to Black people. So I mentioned, for example, two nasty chemicals or chemical categories, BPA and phthalates. These are endocrine disrupting chemicals, meaning they are chemicals that can cause gender bending. Chemicals that when ingested at a high enough level can feminize males and masculinize females. They are very nasty chemicals. Did you know that according to scientific tests, Black babies, Black children have the highest body burden of BPA and phthalates, meaning our children have the highest level of these chemicals in our blood than any other demographic in this country.
Wow.
Black children walk around with the highest level of blood contamination of BPA and phthalates than any other demographic. And what is the source of all of this BPA? All of these phthalates that are swimming in the blood of our babies? It is the food we eat. For example, the canned food. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us in How to Eat to Live to stay away from canned foods. Today, we now know that canned foods, which are lined, the cans are lined with BPA. This is a major source of BPA exposure to Black people because we are so food insecure is a word they use, because food deserts, our communities are dense with food deserts. So we are forced to rely on dollar stores to do our grocery shopping. We are forced to rely on McDonald's and Wendy's for our nightly dinners. And all of these are sources of this BPA and phthalates that are swimming in the blood of our children. And so by the time our children reach puberty, this is why you see so much gender bending among us. This is why it's so hard today. It's much harder today with millennials and especially with Gen Z children. It's harder to physically distinguish between males and females. It's not like with our generation, Gen X. The physiological difference was very clear. It's not so clear, especially with Gen Z children, because it is these children, millennials and Gen Z, who have the highest body burden of these very nasty chemicals, and the main source of exposure of these chemicals is the food that we eat.
Where do you think we went wrong as parents? Being too lax, being too friendly? Because back in the day, we didn't have a lot of that. We grew our own food. We, you know, our parents and grandparents sometimes have a garden in the backyard. You get your peas and your, you know, string beans, things of that nature. You know, where did we go wrong, and what can we do to fix it or try to help fix it?
You hit right on it. At that time, Brother Big Rob, when we were growing our own food, remarkably, it was at that very time that our health measures were greater than white people in America. We were more healthy, even though we are the traumatized sons and daughters of enslaved Africans. We were the poorest of the populations in this country. And that poverty forced us to plant our food, and so we were healthier than white people. Did you know that, in answering your question, where we went wrong, fast food was not created for us. The fast food industry, McDonald's, was created for wealthy white people who were able to travel. So these fast food joints was put on down freeways, and they were accessible to white people, where we didn't have the expendable income to go to fast food joints. We had to grow our food, and we were healthier than white people. Where we went wrong, Brother Big Rob, is we started eating Big Macs for dinner like white people, but the Big Mac had changed by then. The quality of the food, once they started saturating poor zip codes with fast food joints, the food changed. And so where we went wrong is we stopped cooking for our children, for ourselves. Where we went wrong was we put our mouth back in the white man's kitchen.
Whoa. Wow. Dr. Wesley Muhammad got an online question. Treasure X asked the question, do you think weed is a gateway drug?
Today it is. It was not that. Louis Armstrong's joints wasn't that. When Harry Anslinger, the infamous Harry Anslinger, at the time in his propaganda to criminalize and villainize marijuana because the main users were black and brown, he put forth certain statements that were untrue myths regarding the marijuana at the time, but he knew that he had scientists working to make those myths reality. One of the myths that Harry Anslinger propagated was that marijuana was a gateway drug that would lead our children to harder drugs. Well, it's not just that he knew that that wasn't true for the marijuana of the time. He also knew that scientists were working to make it so. And so in the 1960s, Dr. Alexander Shulgin, who's responsible for this current weaponized weed and also this current Molly. So when we talk about the weaponization of hip hop, both the drug-soaked hip hop, the drugs that soak hip hop so much, marijuana and Molly, Alexander Shulgin is the author of both of these modern drugs. Now, what he did, the reason cannabis naturally isn't a gateway drug, it wasn't addictive, but today's marijuana is a gateway drug and is very addictive. THC, naturally, a distinguishing characteristic of THC in natural cannabis is that it is a psychoactive chemical in the plant that is non-alkaloid. It doesn't have a nitrogen atom in it. Other psychoactive chemicals, heroin and others, they're alkaloids. They are addictive because they have that nitrogen chemical in their makeup. Natural THC does not have a nitrogen chemical in it. It was Alexander Shulgin working for the U.S. Army Chemical Corps in its Conquer by Cannabis project. Get the name. The U.S. Army Chemical Corps had a project called Conquer by Cannabis Project, how to weaponize cannabis to conquer people. They contracted Alexander Shulgin, who added a nitrogen atom to the THC molecule, making this weaponized weed like the new heroin. The weed that people are smoking today is the weed that has this, in the THC, has this nitrogen atom in it. That's why this weed is so addictive. That's why this weed is a gateway drug, whereas the original cannabis wasn't, because the weed that's being smoked today is not God's holy herb. It is Satan's botanical mischief making.
Wow.
Wow.
Big Rob, go with your question. We got a special guest coming in too in a second. Go ahead, Big Rob.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, bring the special guest. You made me forget what I wanted to ask, brother. I forgot what I wanted to ask, brother. It was actually doing with what he said about the food. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to ask him, had he watched the docuseries, The Food That Made America? And it talked about some of what he's talking about.
Netflix?
You know,
is that Netflix?
I believe so, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And it talked about, you know, how McDonald's and Burger Kings and all these people, you know, and how the meat and KFC, all that was original, and then it started to turn into these patties and all of this kind of stuff. And it's very interesting that you said what you said, because it's sad that we want everything so easy in our lives now. Right. We don't want to work, and our parents and grandparents and stuff worked for everything that they got, every meal, every morsel of food that they got. They went out in the backyard, they learned how to grow with their hands and the soil that they had to work with, and even if it was a small garden, you had something fresh on the table, whether it be the cabbage, the greens, whatever it was. It was fresh. You went outside, you picked it, you cleaned it, and you cooked it. You know, and you know, I thank you for bringing that up, because a lot of people are feeding their kids off McDonald's.
Yes, sir.
Right. Well, our special guest was the first Nation of Islam person to be elected mayor of a city.
Uh-oh.
family.
I definitely got to shut up now.
Yeah, when you watch Savers Day, he's always on stage close to the minister.
Yes,
And made it happen for Big Rob and I to meet the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's a good friend of the show. We want to welcome the Honorable Student Minister Marcus Muhammad. How you doing today, Brother Marcus?
Fine, thank Allah. It's good to be. I don't want to crash the party, so to speak, because I really just want to continue to listen to Dr. Wesley Muhammad, my good friend, student minister, and the city of Benton Harbor is on the edge of our seats.
Oh, it's so good to see you, dear brother and colleague, brother Minister Mayor Marcus. How are you?
You know, blessed by the best. You know, just
you are never a crash. Certainly not in the negative sense. Wherever you are, there is the guidance of the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan, who has been guiding you not just as a minister, but as a politician. And that's why I don't like politicians, but I like and I love you. You always breed a politician.
We're trying to be a public servant and take that approach. But I wanted to ask Doc, in terms of the state governments, some have allowed for medical marijuana to be legal. Of course, in the state of Michigan, which we're both from, it was via referendum. And there were some laws on the books prior to for medical. But why would you say, from your research and your understanding, why has the federal government taken the position that they have, given all that it entails?
Wow.
Thank you for that very important question. I have said, and I maintain today, that the greatest trick America is playing on Black people is a state by state legalization of marijuana. It's a big trick. The reason the state by state legalization is a big trick and a trap of Black people, because the federal criminalization of marijuana renders the state legalization pointless. Proof of that is in the states, the initial states where marijuana was legalized. For example, Colorado, among the first to legalize both medical and recreational marijuana. One of the campaign talking points to galvanize support for that measure was that the toll that Black and brown males suffered because of the criminalization of marijuana. Black and brown males who did not smoke weed significantly more than white males did, but got arrested significantly more than white males did on a marijuana charge. The argument was that by legalizing marijuana, that discrepancy would change. And what we found, in fact, in Colorado, in California, and in other states, that the arrest rate of Black and brown marijuana users did not decrease, it increased. Arrests for marijuana of Black and brown males in states where marijuana use is legal, the arrests increase. Why? Because when the state legalizes it, the federal government at its discretion can come in and make arrests. And so the great trick is state legalization absent federal decriminalization. So this is what happens. In states where it's legal, they can not only can the feds still make and are still making the arrests, but employers are still given a green light to drug test employees and terminate the employment if they have marijuana in their system. And so we have our dear sister, our track phenom. I'm so disappointed that the Olympics would treat her this way. She is in a state where marijuana is legal. So she had every reason to believe that she wasn't doing anything wrong. These drug laws are selectively applied. And so she suffered a family tragedy. She's in a state where the whole culture says it's okay to smoke weed. And she did, and she's paying a price for it. So, Brother Mayor, state legalization, absent federal decriminalization, is just a trick and a trap for Black people. And so now all of these Black people across the state are celebrating marijuana legalization like they're celebrating Juneteenth. Right? And so smoke is all in the air. But when after a few years go by, like Colorado and California, when you actually do the investigation, you would see that what was such a joyous occasion for us originally turned out to be another tragedy for Black America.
Wow. Wow. Question for both of y'all while we got Mayor Marcus Muhammad. Over the weekend, over 150 homicides across America, over 300, I think, shootings and across America, majority in Black neighborhoods. 400, over 400 across America. Dr. Wesley Muhammad, what is happening in Black America and what is the solution to this crime? And I want to get the mayor's perspective also.
Well, there's a lot of things going on. I am in the city of Chicago, which is such an epicenter of Black carnage. But it's very instructive being here in Chicago. I'm not from Chicago. Being here now 10 years, I'm learning that while the reality is even worse than the reputation, but I'm seeing the nuance. The carnage here isn't just Black folks wilding. The carnage here is very much orchestrated at higher levels. And nationally, Black carnage is orchestrated with this so-called Black on Black phenomenon. It's a scientifically, it's not just a socially produced phenomenon. It's a scientifically, induced phenomenon. Black people have become, in certain zip codes, have become hyper violent. I suggest that if we were, for example, to measure the serotonin levels of the average Black male in certain zip codes that are hyper violent, if we were to examine the serotonin levels of the average male in those zip codes, we would find that the serotonin has been depleted. And we have documented that serotonin depletion, just like testosterone depletion, was an aim of the US government and its allied institutions. Here in Chicago, they did experiments on young Black males to deliberately chemically drop or deplete serotonin. Now, why is that important? And to your question, serotonin, this brain chemical, is very important because the right amount of it, it helps us control our impulses. It helps us get control of our inhibitions. It inhibits us appropriately so we don't fall victim to our passions, right? Our instincts, our impulses. We need the right amount of serotonin to put the brakes on our impulses. Right. If serotonin is the brake for our
I think we lost Dr. Wesley Muhammad for a second. We have an are you there, Mayor?
I am.
Oh yeah, I think we might lost him for a second. We're live on radio in Shreveport, Louisiana, Orlando, Florida, Muskegon, Michigan, and Ben Harbor, Michigan. Dr. Wesley Muhammad. His internet might have went out for a second. We're getting back. You back, Dr. Wesley. Go ahead, finish your point. You back.
So I was saying, if you take a male and you drop his serotonin and you increase his noradrenaline is the accelerator of impulses. If serotonin is the brakes for impulse, noradrenaline is the accelerator. So if you drop serotonin and increase noradrenaline, this is how you scientifically produce aggression, or the super predator in Hillary Clinton's word. That concept, super predator, wasn't just an empty, vague, vacuous concept. It was being scientifically produced in the inner city, this super predator. So it exists, but it doesn't exist naturally. There are super predators here in the city of Chicago, but they are a lab product of this government and its academic institutions. Wow. And I believe that undergirds so much of the violence that we see. But with one caveat, let me say this, because this carnage is not new. I've been in Chicago for 10 years now. And what impressed me has been that the reality outstrips the reputation. Chicago had a bad reputation for violence. And the reality is sadder even than the reputation. So this is not new. But I would say what is new, the consequences of the poverty and the despair that the COVID pandemic has caused. See, the COVID pandemic or plandemic has been, using the term not bandemic, it's been a pandemic for a lot of white people. A lot of white people, the wealthy have gotten profoundly, in fact, grotesquely wealthier,
right,
as a consequence of this pandemic, while the middle class has been destroyed. The poor has become so desperately poorer, and so with such desperation, we should expect to see so much an increased level of violence, an increased level of predatory behavior.
Wow, Dr. Wesley Muhammad. Mayor Marcus, from your perspective, what do you see from a mayor and also a student minister?
So from a spiritual, I'll start right there, because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he said that all of our problems begin with a spiritual problem.
That is right.
And from a spiritual problem, you get an economic problem.
That's right.
Because if gambling or crack cocaine, that's spiritual. Where if the spiritual part is corrected, then I stop smoking.
That's right.
Right. But if I'm smoking, then that's going to now affect my money.
That's right.
Right. And from an economic problem, now you got a social problem. Because if I'm trying to feed my habit, now I'm stealing.
That's right.
Right. Or breaking and entering. So now it creates a criminal problem. Right. And then from the social problem, it's a community problem So we see in our communities, you know, right now, Benton Harbor, we got probably at least $30 million, $40 million in development right now. By the end of the year, we'll probably be at 100 million. If I look outside of, I'm in my office here at City Hall, the whole Wall Street is totally dug up. So there is development, you know, there's jobs, it's people working, right? But how is that impacting the Black community? So what has happened, Pharaoh has let us go. He shut down his manufacturing plants, right? You can't work at Bendix no more. You can't work, you know, he's shutting down his schools. So that's cutting off the employment, right? So we can't feed off of the American system as we used to. And what they've done is pulled the jobs out and pumped the dope, the drugs, the weed, the meth, pumped all of that in. They barely even want you in the army today. That's right. You used to could be all you can be. But now that's being cut off.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? So I think as Black people, we have to do some major introspection.
Absolutely. Excellent.
As a community, and look at how can we really look at the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and what he has given us. Because if Pharaoh has let us go, then where is Moses and where is Aaron?
Excellent.
Right.
You know, so you know, it's in politically, I'm here to tell you, as a mayor, politics will not solve our problems.
Excellent.
Money will not solve our problem, even though the Bible says money solveth all things. That's true. But love is not a thing.
Right.
Peace is not a thing.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Joy is not a thing.
Excellent.
Right.
Excellent.
Happiness is not a thing.
Right.
I can give you all the things in the world and you still won't be happy.
Excellent.
So, you know, we gotta just totally re-look and examine everything as a people, and at school, church, mosque, relate, because if he's making all things new, then what we've been doing, we got to look at.
That is right.
And we got to come together, one, in unity, and then sit down and see how can we first be brothers. You a Christian? Okay, that's good. I'm a Muslim. Oh, you GD, you VL, our problems is the same.
That's right.
And the last part I'll say, the Million Man March gave us a good example of when we come together. You had the pastors, which is the clergy.
Right.
You had the businessman. You had the media communications, right?
Right.
We all came together and got the Million Man March.
Wow.
We need to look at that motto and look at that unity and see how can we rebuild our communities.
Wow. Thanks, student minister. I'm gonna put you in the background. We're gonna finish the conversation. Thank you for joining us, man. You know,
I appreciate you. We got a council meeting at 7 p.m. Love you, Dr. Wesley.
Love
and I
you,
look forward to talking with you.
All right, take care, student minister Marcus Muhammad. Few more minutes left for Dr. Wesley. Big Rob, did you have another question?
Oh yeah, I got several questions for Doctor. I don't know how much time he got with us, but you know,
I'm here. I'm enjoying. I'm loving this conversation. I'm loving your presence.
Yes, sir. What do you think of how now they're magnifying Tulsa and what happened 100 years ago? You have some people saying it's a trick. You got some people saying that it's about time. You got some of the survivors saying, you know, it's about time. And the bodies that they're coming up with as they dig. What are your thoughts on Tulsa and it happening 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago now? But
I believe that those who are suspicious of the new focus on Tulsa are right to be suspicious. You know, Black people have been celebrating Juneteenth for years. But now, and in fact, it was usually those who celebrated Juneteenth were always the more woke among us, right? Even some would say the more radical. The average Black person, Negro, didn't even know what Juneteenth was.
Right.
So you had to have a level of wokeness, even though, much less celebrate Juneteenth. Now that our president Biden has made Juneteenth a national holiday here in Chicago, because Juneteenth is in June, which is Pride Month. Here in Chicago, they have merged the celebration of Juneteenth and Pride Month. And so at these Juneteenth celebrations, they have drag shows and transgender performances.
No.
So, yes.
No.
Wow.
Suspicious.
Wow.
When our enemies are lifting Black tragedy, these are the same people who call the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan a hater because he reminds Black people of our suffering here in America and what America owes us for that suffering. America does not want us to remember the horrors of slavery, so we should know that they really don't want us to remember the true horrors of Tulsa. So if they are focusing on Tulsa, it is because it serves their agenda. So we should not surrender to the sanitized Tulsa narrative, because that's what they always do. Once they co-opt the narrative, they sanitize it.
Wow.
They sanitize.
I got
you know that the co-opted Tulsa narrative is not the real narrative of Tulsa.
Man,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about this thing with Bill Cosby. Did you see Judge Joe Brown interview? Got to do the station ID. WHPB LP 98.5 Pine Hills, Orlando, Florida. WVS LP 103.7 Muskegon, Michigan. WVBH 105.3 Ben Harbor, Michigan. WKSHLP 97.7 Sweetport, Louisiana. We live with Dr. Wesley Muhammad. Bill Cosby was let out of prison. There was a mixtures of reviews. Judge Joe Brown went on BNC and oh my God.
Yeah, he let Lamont Hill have it.
I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but what was your thoughts on Bill Cosby being let out and your whole thought of this whole situation?
Yes, it is right that Bill Cosby was let out, and he wasn't let out on a technicality. He was let out because his imprisonment was unjust, unconstitutional. We should never dismiss correcting a constitutional violation as a technicality. Judge Brown is correct, and Judge Brown and Dr. Mark Lamont Hill are both my brothers, as Bill Cosby is my brother. Wrong is wrong, right?
Right.
If we can criticize Bill Cosby for doing wrong, we should be willing to acknowledge and criticize the system when it transparently did wrong. Judge Brown is correct in that Bill Cosby and those women, by all believable reports, were engaging conscientiously, engaging in the sex drug culture of the time. Bill Cosby cannot, from those encounters, be described as a predator, as Harvey Weinstein is a predator, as so many of those in and around the White House are predators. So Bill Cosby may have done some wrong, and he did, in messing with all of those white women and married to a beautiful black woman. And we can be critical of him of that, but we can't be self-righteous in our criticism. But his imprisonment, he was railroaded. His constitutional rights were violated. And he was put in prison for what, by all the real evidence, he was not guilty of. So it was right that he was let out of prison. We can have a community discussion about, his so-called philandering or whatever, however we want to morally judge his behavior. That behavior was not criminal. Certainly it wasn't the crime that he was railroaded and sent to prison for.
There you go. Big Rob, go ahead.
Okay. I had a question text to me. They wanted me to ask you, how vigilant should we be regarding images, billboards, displays that are predominantly in black neighborhoods of weed, alcohol, tobacco, and etc.? How should we address that on a city level, and how important is it that we get rid of those images and replace them?
It's extremely important because those are the main vehicles for psychological programming, right? It's the subliminal manipulation is a manipulation that we don't see coming, right? And when we drive around the communities, the billboards are all over the place, and most of them we don't consciously recognize, but they subconsciously have their impact, subliminal manipulation. And so we should be very vigilant. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad admonished us, black people, to make our communities safe and decent places to live. We make them safe and we make them decent. Part of making them decent is cleaning up our communities, our physical environment, and controlling the imagery that bombards our environment. And in that effort, in controlling the imagery that has such a powerful subliminal effect on all of us who are subjected to it, whether we know it or acknowledge it, all of us are subject to the subliminal manipulation of the surrounding imagery. So we should be very vigilant in controlling the imagery. But in order to do so, in order to control the imagery, we must control our communities. And so the program of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is separation or death. Separation is a process. It's a process that starts with us taking control of our own neighborhoods. We can do that. We don't have to go back to Africa. We don't have to migrate right now to 5 mineral-rich states in the South, though we should prepare for that. But right now, we can start by taking economic, political, social, and cultural control of our neighborhoods. And when we do so, we can make our neighborhoods safe and decent places for us to live and for our children to grow up in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Also, I wanted to ask you about buck breaking.
Shout out, brother Tariq Nasheed.
Yes,
Another
sir.
big
Yes.
brother.
All of the cast.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Scholars, not cast, the scholars of buck breaking.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You spoke very candidly in that documentary, and if you haven't seen it, Tariq Nasheed, we've got all of his series, Hidden Color series. But you spoke very candidly. How much does that affect us today?
How much does buck breaking affect us today?
Yes, the buck breaking of yesterday affects us today in the homosexuality that they're trying to push on us.
Well, because buck breaking can't be categorized as a yesterday thing. It's a yesterday and a today thing. There was never a break in the buck breaking process here. The methods changed. On a plantation, buck breaking was a very physical, manual thing. They physically, sexually assaulted or physically sodomized Black men. Today, the sodomization is scientific. The buck breaking is chemical versus physical, but it produces the same effect. And how much of a reality is it? We go back to our opening conversation with BET Music Awards. The fact that Lil Nas X's performance, as shocking as it was, you would never, 15, 20 years ago, such a display would never have been green lit for what's supposed to be a family show. Remember all of the hoopla over Janet Jackson accidentally exposing the nipple at the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
We went from there to now at a prime time, was supposed to be a family show, that such an outrageous sexual performance can be greenlit. A homosexual performance can be greenlit on that platform. That to me is the greatest indication of where buck breaking is today. So buck breaking was never just a yesterday thing. That process never ceased. It just changed forms. It changed methods. Now we're in the era of scientific buck breaking.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Wesley Muhammad, a few more questions, and we got a couple online questions. Do you believe population control is real?
Absolutely. I believe that the population control agenda is absolutely real. And it's an agenda that the U.S. government has been committed to since the National Security Study Memorandum 200, the President Carter made official U.S. policy. So, but population control was always a ploy. Population control is the agenda of the rich in order to control the resources of the nations of the poor. Population, this planet can feed and sustain the population that it gives birth to. Allah's planet is well qualified to do so. And the problem of overpopulation, God has built in systems in this order that checks population. So there's a perfect harmony between the earth and what the earth produces and what the earth can sustain. The population control agenda is the agenda of the Western nations, the rich nations that their wealth is totally dependent on the resources of these nations of color. And so in order to control the resources of these nations, they target them with all of these population control measures that allows them to control the resources.
Wow. Online question from Jordan Love. I'm late to the live, but can you name some articles or books you would recommend? I'm interested in learning more. Thank you, Jordan.
The first book, Brother Jordan, if you have not read it yet, is Message to the Black Man by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And second, How to Eat to Live by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is extremely important for our subject today, because these two sources, Message to the Black Man and How to Eat to Live by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they identify self and the enemy. When we talk about the scientific assault on Black America, the reason we had to produce an 800-page book with 2,000 footnotes is because Black people are so incredulous. Black people hear this stuff and we are so inclined to disbelieve that somebody could be so wicked that they would poison the food, poison the water, poison the air deliberately of a people. And so in order to convince, to overcome Black folks' incredulity, we had to produce a work with 2,000 footnotes.
Wow.
Now, the reason we are so incredulous is because we don't understand. As the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, we can't fathom the depths of Satan. But we should recognize who Satan is. And then we will understand why a human being is capable of doing this stuff. And Message to the Black Man by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad acquaints us with who we are and acquaints us with the real enemy who's at the root of this assault that we're talking about, and not how to eat to live. I said we're talking about the scientific assault on Black America. I mentioned that the number one vector for this assault, the number one avenue for these wicked chemicals, is the food that we eat. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in his 2-volume set, How to Eat to Live, gives us the solution to the problem. It tells us what foods to avoid eating and what foods we should eat in order to counter the scientific assault. How to Eat to Live is the antidote, or the instructions within How to Eat to Live are literally the antidote to the scientific assault via the food that we eat.
Yes, thank God. Me and Big Rob, both of us read those books. Next question from
Volume 1 and Volume 2.
Exactly.
Got the hard copy of the Message to the Black Man and about 50 soft copies I give away. So
we gave away to people in the community, to kids.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This question is coming from Texas. It said, "Peace, God. Will you be visiting Fort Wayne, Texas anytime soon? I love meeting you in person." To Bill.
Thank you, beloved. I would love to do so. I have not been invited to Fort Texas yet. If you want to, Fort Worth, Texas. But I am open to considering an invitation to Fort Worth.
There you go. There you go, Prince. You got to bring him there, Prince. Make it happen. Andy just posted a question, but you already talked about the food distributed by zip codes. Dr. Wesley, I know we didn't cover everything, but I hope that we been able to get enough information out there for people can tap in with you. How can they follow you, and where should they connect? How can they connect?
And get your books. His books are awesome.
Thank you. I am available across the various platforms. Wesley Muhammad and Dr. Wesley Muhammad on Facebook, Wesley Muhammad on Instagram and YouTube. And please subscribe to my website, www.drwesley.online, drwesley.online. There you can order our book, Understanding the Assault, Volume 1 and Understanding the Assault, Volume 2. The Pot Plot, Marijuana, Hip Hop, and the Scientific Assault on Black America. That's drwesley.online, drwesley.online.
What about those Black God protocol shirts you have. How can we buy some of those?
Same in the next few days, you can go to the same site, drwesley.online, to order your Black Guy Protocol.
Man, should every black man?
I appreciate that shout out.
Man, I saw that shirt you posted. I got to get one, but you didn't. You let us know it was coming up. But should every black man?
The next couple of days,
I'm on
make
it.
Make sure you got some
available. You're gonna see the announcement.
Make sure you got some fat guy sizes, because I'm a big dude.
We got them all.
Okay.
Every black man should look at themselves as a God.
Absolutely. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad said, every time you see a black man, you are looking at God.
Whew, there you go.
That undergirds Black God Protocol. The words of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Every time you look at a black man, you are looking at God.
Paul, that's what it says. Remember that hoodie I got that you liked?
Yes.
That had the most honorable Elijah Muhammad on it. That's what it says on there.
Looking at God. Thank you so much, my brother.
Thank you, Brother Paul, Brother Big Rob.
Yes, sir.
Tremendously enjoyed this conversation today.
I'm gonna let you know, this is like a birthday treat for me. My birthday is in 2 days.
Oh, happy early born day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
How old will you be?
Woo! Big 54.
No. I'm thankful to Allah because Brother Paul, it seems that the black man in America, our life expectancy is 50. So it's like we turn 50 and we drop. So it's a blessing. I love to hear us making 50 and exceeding 50. So every birthday, you're 54, every birthday after 50 is such a blessing for the black man in America. Happy born day to you, Brother Paul. And may Allah bless you with many, many more.
Yes, sir.
And the doctor, he wanted to be in a hurricane on his birthday and all that, and talk to you. Of course, that was fine, but the hurricane part I didn't understand.
No, we want to stay clear of those hurricanes. We need another 50 from you.
There you go.
Sir.
The work you're doing, Brother Paul.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. We appreciate. We want to thank all the radio stations for covering this. And Dr. Wesley Muhammad, we'll be in contact with you, man. Peace and blessings to you. In the words of my Muslim brother, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.